Hey guys, welcome back to Andy's Dinosaur Reviews, and today we are back with another brand new Mattel Jurassic World Rebirth release. As you can see, we are going to begin taking a look at the newer Strike Attacks. This probably is the most anticipated overall for this wave. We've got the Achillobator, and this one is such a mixed bag for me because it's a very cool looking figure. However, they went super stylized, I would say, with this one. Not like horribly, but definitely way more stylized than they went with their Utah Raptor. So personally, I wouldn't have minded it looking kind of like the Utah Raptor, but just slightly different because, you know, it wouldn't look too far off from what the Utah Raptor looks like. But at the same time, I do appreciate Mattel giving us something that does look a little bit different, you know, from the other dinosaurs. And more often than not, you'll never find Mattel making one species of a dinosaur that might look similar to another looking similar in that kind of a way. They usually give one like a very stylized look to make it look vastly different from the other. The other problem that I have with the figure though is the fact that it's so small. It's an Achillobator. It should be in like the Wild Roar size range if we're keeping up with the Utah Raptor, but unfortunately it is not. And we have it, you know, really quite small here with a Strike Attack. They could have used this as like a Deinonychus or something if they really wanted to, and that would have probably made a little more sense. But overall, it does look like a really cool figure, and I actually think the paintwork and everything looks much nicer here in person than I was expecting it to. But you can see, again, the packaging is pretty much the standard that it has been the entire way through. Then down here, you can see the other three figures that are in this wave of Strike Attacks. So let's pop this box open and check it out. So here is our Achillobator now out of the packaging. We could probably get it in a little bit more of a natural position. Actually, it seems like the position is meant to be kind of up like that. So the leg doesn't really seem to want to go far forward in a, like that's really about as far. Oh, there we go. We got it a little bit more forward. So we might be able to get it leaning down a little bit, but this one's standing kind of more upright than most, you know, Raptor figures that Mattel releases. But you can see, starting here in the head sculpt does look fairly decent. It does absolutely have some nice looking fine detail. And overall, I instantly want another one of these to repaint now getting close to the head sculpt, because I think, you know, on top of the fact that there is some sloppiness on this one, but I think the head sculpt looks really cool, and there's probably a lot you could do with it as far as repainting. But we do have a brownish tone here in the snout. We can see the nostrils. Again, some nice looking scale detail. As we move back toward the eye, we transition to a black, and then we've got a nice green eye, which definitely shines due to that darker coloration there of the body. And you can obviously make out one of the most defining features of this figure, and that's this massive crest of feathers up here on the top of the head. And I think they actually look really cool. There's definitely some nice fine detail included within them as well. And we see some finer feathers start to run down there along the back of the head of the dinosaur. But we do also have skin texture. This sadly is not a fully feathered raptor, which honestly I much would have preferred it had been similar to what we had with the Utah Raptor. But you can see, moving back into the neck, we do have some scales here leading down, and also some scars. You can kind of see some scars and injuries here on the side of the neck of this one. But anyway, we led way too far away from the face. We also have a lighter tone for the lower jaw, and then you've got what appears to be maybe like a small amount of feathers there on the lower jaw as well. You can open the mouth, and inside the mouth we have the tongue sculpted out, painted with a nice pinkish tone, also glossed pretty nicely. You don't have any of that pinkish tone on the inside of the mouth on the upper side. No, it's just a dark tone up there. There is the same standard like detail you usually find from Mattel up there, but no real paintwork or anything. And you can see the teeth look okay. They haven't really found a way to make the teeth better on these smaller figures quite yet for some reason. Like, we've improved the teeth on a lot of the larger figures, but not so much on the smaller ones quite yet. But the worst part about this one is just how sloppy that paintwork of the teeth is for some reason. Like, it is absolutely everywhere on this figure. But as you move down, you do see that lighter tone follow down along the underside of the neck and throat and kind of stripe up into the black and pattern up into the black, and it looks really cool. It definitely, again, plays off of the black tone really nicely. As you move down, you can see we do have some neck articulation, but that's going to be a part of the action feature. We also have a pretty smooth transition away with that blackish tone as we move into the body, and then we have a brownish tone similar to the brown that we see in the face, but kind of a little bit of a different shade of color. The one in the face is a little bit more of an orangish brown, and although this one's kind of like a reddish brown. Like, it's not too far off as far as the tone goes, but definitely a little bit. Actually, I don't even know if I would say that is a brown at all in the face. Now looking at it, definitely has way more of an orange look to it. But this is definitively a brown. But as you move down, you see, again, a little bit of a different style to the skin texture of this one, and almost looking like this dinosaur maybe was once fully feathered, and now they've plucked the feathers, because it does sort of have like that plucked chicken kind of a look to it. We do have a little more feathering here moving along the back of the dinosaur, as well as another little area of feathers similar to the crest on the top of the head there that picks up in the like mid-back area. As you move down into the arm, you can see more feathers leading off of the back of the elbow, some muscle definition. You can also see more injuries and cuts and scrapes throughout the course of this entire figure, which is something that we haven't seen a whole lot in the Rebirth figures. That was more of like a Chaos Theory series or wave, however you want to term it, 2 thing. But now we see it reappearing here in some of these figures for Rebirth. But moving down into the hands, you can see the hands are sculpted pretty nicely. We've also got some scoots down the fingers, some decently sculpted claws, and the hands are actually placed correctly. We don't have pronated wrists, which is also a great thing. You, of course, have arm articulation forward and back, you know, standard stuff for Mattel. Moving back into the thigh, you can see another slice down there along the thigh. You can also see some nice muscle definition. Again, fairly rough and rugged skin texture, still giving it kind of the look of a plucked chicken. We have the kneecap right there, as well as a nice bulging calf muscle with a little bit more traditional skin texture back there. And then leading down into the foot sculpt, you do have some scoots moving down the toes, some pretty nicely sculpted claws that actually do look quite nice, and they do have a bit of a gloss coat to them. No actual paintwork, sadly, but they do have a satin shine, which you can definitely see, and they do contain some nice detail as well within the claws. And I feel like the feet are definitely a bit more proportionate than what we see on most raptors in this size range. Like when you look at the older Mattel raptors, the feet are massive, whereas these ones aren't really all that large compared to what I'm used to. We do, of course, have leg articulation forward and back. Same deal with the leg over here, and that's really about it as far as that goes. You don't have any movement out away from the body. Actually, there's the Vax app code before I forget it, because I do have a bad habit of forgetting it. If my camera wants to focus on it, there you go. If you want to add the Achillobator to your collection. And then as you move out into the tail, you can see one more area, one more seam of articulation. Actually, 2 maybe, yes. So you have a swivel, or do you? Nope, no you don't. It does kind of move. Looks like you would have a swivel right there, but it actually does not, unfortunately, move. But you do have, of course, this spot right here, which is part of the action features, since this is a strike attack, but you have a few more injuries, and again, more of that standard kind of skin texture. We can also see there's a bit of a speckling on this one, which I actually didn't notice up until right now. But as you do move out into the tail, you randomly get a nice big display of plumage on the end of the tail that is painted out with a nice yellowish tone and does look really cool, and definitely highly detailed. Like the feathers themselves really sport some nice looking fine detail. One thing Mattel has vastly improved, I would say, is the fine detail of their figures, especially when it comes to the feathered dinosaurs, and you can really see that here on the Achillobator. It is unfortunate, though, again, that this is not a fully feathered dinosaur. It really should have been. But as you move over here to the other side, it looks pretty much the same. Again, not really much of any difference from one side to the other outside of the positioning of the leg, because the leg is leading here on this side, whereas it was trailing on the other side. But again, everything else looks pretty much the same over here. Also, there is a little bit of an ugly seam that moves along the head right here. They didn't connect that one too well for some reason. But as far as the action feature goes, it's pretty much what you would expect it to be. You push the tail down, and as you can see, it strikes and attacks, hence Strike Attack. And you have an attacking Achillobator right there, which does look pretty cool. But overall, the figure does stand upright, which kind of makes it look a little bit awkward, but at the same time, I guess it's okay. It makes sense for that kind of attacking motion. It's almost like it's like jumping up and coming down for the attack with the way that it is posed. Can you get it down in that other, more natural positioning? Let's see. Yeah, I mean, you can definitely get it down pretty low. You can get some decent poses and everything for it. So yeah, there you go. You can kind of get it in a decent position, but now it looks a little awkward with the tail up so high. Once you try to get the tail in a more natural position, then the head goes down, so it's a little bit of a tricky one, I will say. As far as a size goes, though, in its more natural position, well, I don't know if I would say natural, but as far as the way Mattel had meant to pose it. For a length, you are looking at about 6¼ inches, or just shy of about 16 centimeters. And then for a height, just a hair under 4 inches, or right around 10 centimeters on the dot. For a size comparison, there is Mr. Papo T-Rex, the Attack Pack Achillobator, Robert Muldoon, and the Collect Day Human Being next to our Mattel Achillobator, and you can see it's definitely quite small. Pretty much as you would expect it to be in the Strike Attack size range, definitely a lot smaller than I would like. And then we've got another size comparison here with a Mattel Velociraptor next to their Achillobator, and you can see that the Achillobator maybe is even a little bit smaller than a standard Velociraptor. It does just have a slightly smaller appearance to it, but one thing that you can notice is how much better the feet look on this Achillobator compared to the older Raptors. Look at those massive clown feet on that Dominion Raptor compared to the new Rebirth Achillobator. It just looks so much better. And then this one is still in package, but here is a Mattel Utah Raptor next to the Achillobator, and these two should be much closer in size than what we see here. And this, again, is like my biggest complaint about this figure. Also, the lack of feathering through the entire body. It would have looked so much nicer had it just been fully feathered. But you can very clearly see that Mattel really dropped the ball, I'll say, as far as releasing an Achillobator. They should have just held off on this one and released it later on in the Wild Roar size range, and it would have been way cooler. So this brand new Mattel Jurassic World Rebirth Strike Attack Achillobator is, as I said at the beginning of the review, quite a mixed bag. It's a very cool looking figure. It does look a lot different than most Mattel figures, which is one of the things that I think I like the most about it. I also think that the actual stylized look they've given it with the crest of feathers and the very cool tail feathers and everything does look really neat. I think overall the design looks really cool, but would have looked better had it actually had a fully feathered body like the Utah Raptor did. The biggest downside, I think, for me, though, is the smaller size. The smaller size of this one really kind of takes this figure just out of the game for me because it's so tiny compared to the way it should be. And also, the skin texture does have a bit of an awkward look. Again, the fact that it does have skin texture rather than feathers is kind of obnoxious, but the fact that it has such a kind of plucked chicken look makes it look like it is a, an Achillobator with a health condition. So it now just lost a lot of its feathers, which makes it look a little bit more awkward overall. It does have some pretty decent paintwork, though, to it, which is nice. Again, it does have almost a fully painted look. If it actually had painted claws, I think we'd be there. But again, I think the color scheme and everything that they've given it looks nice and natural, a little bit flashy at the same time, and overall, quite nicely done. It does have a fun action feature, as Strike Attacks usually do, pretty much the exact action feature you would expect, and a little bit of articulation on top of that. So if you are interested in this, it has actually begun showing up at Targets throughout the United States. I know a few people that have found them, myself included, of course. So check your local Target. Hopefully you can find it there, and like, comment, and subscribe, and I will see you in the next review. Thanks for watching.